¿Qué ha habido, gente? ¿Cómo están? Bienvenidos a un episodio más de Pase Pantalla. Ahorita voy a cambiar a inglés. Recuerden que ya les había comentado como en un poll si tenían algún problema con tener episodios en inglés, porque creo que la comunidad en inglés tiene mucho que aportarnos a nosotros. Entonces, por eso tenemos ya al primer invitado en inglés. Y bueno, a partir de este momento voy a empezar a hablar en inglés. Una disculpa para los que no les gusta que esté hablando inglés, pero bueno, y una disculpa también para los que no me van a entender para los errores que llegue a tener no hablando inglés. Entonces, bueno, sin más por el momento, introduzco a Ian, mejor conocido como DynastyIM en Twitter. Ian, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? It's nice to be here.
¿Cómo estás?
Not too bad. I would love to respond in Spanish, but it's just probably wouldn't be too helpful.
No worries, no worries. So, hey everybody. So Ian, better known as DynastyIM, is one of the, in my opinion, best analytics guys out there in Twitter. So that's why I invited him here to the podcast, and I hope you all have a great time and we all learn a little bit more about analytics and how it's related to football and how it's related to the little game we like to play that's called Dynasty Fantasy Football. So Ian, let's talk a little bit about you. How did you start it? Why did you start it? Everything. All right, I think we're having problems with Ian's internet, so just a sec. Are you there? Yeah, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
I'm Ian. You can find me at Dynasty_IM on Twitter. Like you said, predominantly analytics person, not someone that grinds the film or anything like that. Not saying film isn't important because I use a lot of other people's film grades and stuff like that. But in terms of me, that's not what I do. I'm predominantly analytics, just finding the best probabilities in terms of risks, upside, basically how to handle your assets in the game of fantasy football. One of the biggest things I heard when it comes to analytics in fantasy football is that at the end of the day in fantasy football, it comes down to points, you versus the other team in points. So at some point in your analysis, you've got to conclude with numbers.
Yeah, and furthermore, in the episode, we're gonna talk a little bit about how film can and or should be related or not to the analytic process. So before starting to talk about more into analytics, because as you may see on the title, this episode is Analytics 101. So before we talk about that, we're gonna talk about some, well, newsflash. About 1 or 2 hours ago, Calvin Ridley was suspended for a year. So how are you? First of all, how many Ridleys did you have in your dynasty leagues?
So I'm in 6 dynasty leagues. Thankfully, I only had them in 1. So,
Okay. So
not
it's
the
like
worst.
a 17% exposure.
Yep.
That's more or less the same I had, because I had 2 out of 15, so that's about 13%. So more or less the same exposure. What are you doing right now with Calvin Ridley in your dynasty leagues?
Oh, he's just a firm hold right now. Especially when news like this drops, there's a lot of overreaction that takes place in the dynasty landscape. Either people emergency selling, thinking that it's just the greatest time to buy. Usually the golden rule, I say, is that if you have any shares like Calvin Ridley in this situation where he goes out for a year, some major news drops like that, the best thing you can do is hold, because the situation hasn't totally cleared itself up and every little thing is going to affect his dynasty value. So if you're selling right now, if you have Calvin Ridley, you're selling for, if I would guess, a 3rd-round pick, maybe late 2, just nothing that could be as impactful to your fantasy team as a healthy Calvin Ridley could be. So if you're holding him, you have to understand that you're holding an asset that down the line should be a high valued asset, Whereas if you're selling for like a late 2, like we talked about, or early 3, what his value is, you have to understand that the probability that you're going to have a high profiled asset or highly valued asset with that pick is pretty small. It's a lot smaller than Calvin Ridley coming back in a year and being a wide receiver 1 or fringe wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. So he's a hold. He's a firm hold.
Yeah, I think I might be buying, especially this week in particular, because as you said at the beginning, people normally overreact, no? So normally what you see like in like behavioral economic studies and whatever, you see that normally there's a big jump and then it will slightly come down to the mean, no, like a correction. So I think right now we're seeing that overreaction. I've seen it moving. I've seen Ridley moved for like 3.03 or whatever. So I think right now is the moment to like try to buy him in the super low, like in the early third low, or if you have him in your team, hold. I just bought a share like 30 minutes ago for it was in a 1 QB league and I bought him for the 2.10. So that's the price I'm willing to pay, no? Like that's in a super flex league it's about like a 3.03. That's what I'm willing to pay right now for Calvin Ridley, but there's no way I'm selling. Like I think there's no point on selling. Like what's the upside? Like if you're selling for a 2.09 unless you can find a $1 Robinson there, I see no point of selling. So
Yeah, so basically, if you think of it in probabilities, like that late 2, early 3, let's pretend it's like a 10% chance that pick hits, as in has a wide receiver 2 season or RB2 season or whatever you consider a hit. Let's say it has a 10% chance. Whereas the thing with Calvin Ridley is we already know who he is in the NFL. We already have a production profile in the NFL that we know that the risk or downside of Calvin Ridley is waiting that year. Whereas with a prospect, if you're looking at that late round pick that's already not worth a ton, as we know, or however you want to put it, the probability of that pick becoming something is a lot less than Calvin Ridley coming back in a year and being a meaningful impact player on your fantasy team.
also each NFL week, the price of Ridley is gonna go up. Is what we saw with Dobbins and what we saw with Etienne this last year. Every single week is 1 week less for him to play. So the price is gonna go up and up and up and up. So I think I don't know. I think there's no way I'm selling. There's no way I'm selling. Depends on how much, because I think there's also a chance that he might have a reduction on the suspension. Also,
Yeah,
the
that's just
suspension
kind
is
of
not like they said it could be more than a year, but it could also be less if he there's a, I don't know how to say it in English, like a reduction on the suspension or whatever. Like
yeah.
it may be
Yeah,
less.
so there's that chance that it's even less, and that's kind of what we're talking about when we say that the situation is ever unfolding. We don't actually know what's going to happen 100% yet, and that's part of the reason why you shouldn't just sell for that.
I think we're having connection issues, but also they told us he bet 1,500. Like that's too little money. Like I also think there's no like malicious intentions there. I don't know how do you think about it. Like I think there was no like there was a wrongdoing, but maybe the intention wasn't there because he's not. I don't know. Like I find it dumb. So I don't know. I think it was maybe he believed that since he was out of the league, he may be a normal person. I don't know. I still have the feeling that he may have a reduction on the suspension.
Definitely a possibility.
Yeah. So now that we've talked a lot about Ridley, we're gonna go like 10, 15 minutes of trades that have happened in our listener leagues. and then we go ahead with the analytics talking we were talking about. So one trade was Zach Wilson and the 3.07 for Matthew Stafford. Which side are you leaning there?
Probably Matthew. Um, I like Zach Wilson. I think he's an undervalued asset right now. He's someone, especially at a quarterback, who I had as an elite prospect, which means the hit rate's really good. We also know we shouldn't take too much away from rookie quarterback numbers because they aren't as effective as would like them to be. But a 3 point whatever hardly moves the needle when we're trading an unproven asset for a proven asset like Matthew Stafford. And the thing with Zach Wilson is he's unproven, but he doesn't have that Konami upside where we see like with an unproven Justin Fields, an unproven Trey Lance, where they have break fantasy football within the range of outcomes. That's not true for Zach Wilson. It's true that he's undervalued, but when we look at a ceiling, the ceiling very well could just be Matthew Stafford.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The thing, I was the one who sold, but it was right before playoffs, so I wasn't trusting Matthew Stafford. So right now, looking back, I think if that 3.07 was a 2.07,
Oh yeah,
it will be a better deal. So part of the L's I took this season. Next one, it's T Higgins plus a 2023 first for Najee Harris and 2.08. I think I know what you're gonna say.
I do think you know what I'm going to say, but Higgins plus that 2023 first all day. I mean, first of all, running backs themselves, especially ones that aren't profiled as fantastically as like most good ones are. Najee Harris is not that profile type we look for, but one, he's a running back, which makes him risky. He's valued slightly more than T. Higgins, both probably top 50 dynasty fantasy assets. Najee probably a little higher, but a 2023 first added on top clearly pushes the needle to the T, because this far in the looking to the future, we don't know what that 2023 first is. You could be looking at Quentin Johnson, another elite receiver. You could really be adding T. Higgins plus an elite or league-winning asset as a rookie for Najee Harris, who I have my sheets right. There's nothing in his peripherals that says he's this fantastic, one of a kind running back that should be valued like a Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey in Dynasty.
Yeah, one thing I do give credit for, well, it's not to Najee Harris, but he has a lot of opportunities. Like he's one of the top opportunity kings in in fantasy football. He has a lot of carries, a lot of targets, but now that Big Ben is gone, how much will that opportunity change? How much less targets are we gonna see for Najee Harris? And he's old. Like for his second year, he's old. He's basically the same age than Josh Jacobs, who seems that he has been in the league like 4 years. So that's also why I don't like Najee Harris, and I think you don't like him since like March or April. I remember you were against ranking him high on rookie drafts. So the next trade we have is um, another. I think Ian is out, but let's talk a little bit more about T Higgins. How high do you have T Higgins on your rankings, Ian?
Yeah, so I don't do traditional rankings. I kind of view them as assets, elite assets, league winning, but he is very truly a elite asset. So just looking at his profile, he was someone who balled out as a rookie, which if we look at his range of outcomes, gives him a fantastically high ceiling because he's an alpha. He was a solid prospect, and he balled out his rookie year, so he had a high ceiling. Then he comes in and he finishes as a wide receiver one on a mediocrely passing offense. It wasn't a high-powered offense or high-powered passing offense like we'd hoped it would be. And he still finished a wide receiver one alongside Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase. So it should tell you that he's going to earn his alpha share of targets next to other alpha receivers. Well, one alpha receiver in Jamar Chase. But yes, T. Higgins is quite truly an elite asset.
Yeah, he had really amazing numbers, like really really good numbers. Even with the slump we had mid-season, you remember that he was not cracking the 10 points per game in like I don't remember like week 7 to week 10.
Yeah, a lot of that is a touchdown regression that we talked
Yeah,
about, where he just wasn't getting touchdowns. And then at the end of the season, when he did, the PPR spikes, and all of a sudden he finishes as a wide receiver 1.
yeah, he
But
had.
just to add some numbers to T. Higgins, so last year he had 18.6% target share, which is
Yeah, we lost.
he still adds
We lost you.
6%.
We lost you in the 18.6 target here.
Yeah, he had an 18.6% target share his rookie year.
Ian, are you there? Yeah, you there? You there? Right?
Should be.
Yeah. Okay. So the internet doesn't want you to tell us about the rookie season of T. Higgins.
No.
But he
The
had.
basic point here was that he had an 18.6% target share his rookie year. He gets Jamar Chase added and still had 6% to his target share his sophomore season. So he took a fantastic leap while getting very good players alongside of him.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has 12.1 air yards per target. He has over 2 yards per route. He has over 2 yards per team pass attempt. So he had a really, really good season. And I think that the Jamar Chase narrative is always going to be there. So we are always going to be able to buy low on T. Higgins because everybody has the bias of Jamar Chase being on his team, which we don't really care. So, yeah. So next trade, it's going to be, you need to take a note because it's a big trade. It's a DJ Moore, AJ Brown, and a 23 first for Devo Samuel, Gabriel Davis, Kadarius Toney, 1.10 and 2.10.
This one's pretty clearly DJ Moore in the company to me. You get
Yeah.
a 2023 first, which we talked about. You get DJ Moore, another elite asset who's undervalued because of a terrible situation. And you get, who was the others? Oh, AJ Brown. You get
AJ
another
Brown.
absolutely elite receiver, and you're giving up one really elite receiver, a late first, a late second, and then Kadarius Toney and Gabriel Davis, who you should be selling 100% because the Gabriel Davis thing never made sense to me. Like, there was the huge playoff game, and I guess that's what I have to make sense of because that's what's going to... He basically had the same exact season he did his rookie year.
Yeah, he's
all of a
McCall
sudden
Harmon.
Yes.
He's a really expensive McCall Harmon.
Yes. Someone you should be selling because the point is he's really expensive.
I wish I had Gabriel Davis because I want to sell, but I don't have
Yes.
any more with Gabriel Davis. So the last trade in this, so we have a lot of, well, not a lot. We have 6 listener leagues. This is the last trade we have for the 4th listener league. It's Michael Thomas, Hollywood Brown, and a 23 first for T. Higgins, Van Jefferson, and a 23 second.
It's the 23 first, and Marquis Brown and Michael Thomas by far.
You love Marquis Brown, right?
Oh, well, he's just really undervalued, so if you can get him in the steal, 100%.
Yeah.
I really like T. Higgins, but the fact you're able to get a 23 first, a wide receiver who has, let me see here, 4 wide receiver 1 seasons and 4 healthy seasons. You got Marquis Brown, who's put up back-to-back alpha target share season. He's basically a cheaper Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
And you gave up not all that much. You gave up T. Higgins. You gave up an elite asset to get more elite assets. So
Yep.
that's a win.
Yeah, I think, I was the one who acquired Michael Thomas and Hollywood Brown, so
Congratulations.
so a win. And now we're gonna go to the 2 or 3 more minutes of trades. Now this is in the 5th listener league. Shout out to Carlos de la Garza, Carlos Mr. Fantasy, Alex, El Machaca, Manuecho, Edgar Morales, Jonathan Sarasua, Joachim, Ivan Lisiega, and Cifuentuco for being in this league. And now, one trade we had was Devonta Smith and a 3.08 for Saquon and the 4.05. That's a close one.
It was Devonta Smith and 3.08 for Saquon and 4.08?
4.05.
Okay. So the picks here, the difference between a 3.05 or 3.08 and 4.05 really isn't going to be all that much. Those are going to be dart throws. So if we're looking at Saquon versus Devonta Smith, which I'm all for buying Saquon, but you have a much stable asset in Devonta Smith. You have someone in their second year who's really good as a receiver in the first year, which says a lot. He's a wide receiver, which are already more stable than running backs. He's also he's not a running back who's not aging, but I believe Saquon will be 26 here.
25, I think.
25, yeah, that sounds right. I knew he was 25, 26. So you have a middle-aged in terms of prime running back who's a little undervalued, but not stable at all. So if your team already has a bunch of stability built in and you're good, I'm all for taking Saquon here. Because if you can get him for Devonta Smith, there's a very high or a very decent probability that Saquon is more fantasy impactful to your wins, so your wins above replacement, than Devonta Smith is next season. But the floor can fall out from Saquon a lot faster than it can fall out from Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith, the stable, safe, decent upside choice here. So in a vacuum, give me Devonta. If I'm looking for an undervalued running back, because I know my team is good and I can take on a little more risk, I will take Saquon.
Okay. So you've said several times that wide receivers are more stable than running backs. I agree, but can you explain what do you mean with this phrase to the people that are hearing us? Because, yeah.
Sorry, I cut out for a second.
You cut out for a second. So, okay. Again, the question: can you explain us what do you mean with wide receivers being a more stable option than running backs? Because I agree, but I want the people to understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so I wish I had a study for this, and it might be kind of cool to put a study into perspective. But we already know that running back injuries compared to wide receiver injuries are much more common and much more serious, which if you look at wide receiver value charts, like on Keep Trade Cut, where you can see their values falling and rising, we see a lot more fallers when it comes to running backs than we do with wide receivers. Because when it comes to wide receivers, we know that volume in all of fantasy, volume is how you get points in fantasy, essentially. Now, the thing is, a wide receiver's volume, we think is earned. We have belief that targets are earned, which makes their volume earned. Running backs, like we just talked about with Najee, where their volume is given, carries aren't earned like targets are. Because you have one running back, and if it's a run play, the coach is calling for that. Where when it comes to wide receivers, most cases you have 3, 4 on the field at times. It's not a guarantee that target is going to go your way. So you have to earn your volume as a wide receiver, which is where the talent itself is able to prevail. Whereas when it comes to running backs, you get a lot more smoke and mirrors because of the given carries. And then this isn't even adding in injury, like we just talked about, that also makes running backs less stable because they're much more likely for injury or serious injury, and then a sooner falling off prime means that, like, so if we're looking at a 26-year-old Christian McCaffrey compared to a 26-year-old
Devo, I think.
Chris Godwin, Debo, DJ Moore, we know that wide receivers historically have been able to produce longer for their careers than running backs. So we have longevity, we have likeliness, we have earned volume versus given volume. All of this in a vacuum makes wide receivers far more stable than running backs.
Okay, that I absolutely agree, and it's something I've talked about a lot of times in this particular podcast. Last trade before we enter to the next topic: David Mills plus the 1.08 or DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think so. Davis Mills is someone who could possibly be a starter next year, and we know that starters in Superflex League have solid value. But usually, just starters we want to get rid of for draft capital, future assets, whatever we can get, because we don't.
Yeah, we lost Ian again. Sorry about this.
I think the internet wants to fight me today.
Yeah, the internet is not cool with you today.
No.
But yeah, basically, you need to get rid of this type of Davis Mills guys because they only are there for like a year or whatever. So it's basically like I don't know how they call it, like a mid process QB. Like they are looking for a new one, and this guy is there only for the time being. So that's why you kind of want to get rid of them. So now we're gonna talk about the main topic. That's analytics 101. So like I've told you before, Ian is one of the best guys out there that talks about analytics in Dynasty. So now we're gonna talk about some myths in analytics. Ian, what do you think is one of the most important myths in analytics that you will try to debunk today?
I don't know too many myths, but I think one of the things is that data, or the way you show data, can severely skew or manipulate what you're trying to prove. Because the thing is, numbers don't lie. Like if you look at every number and you're able to remove bias, you would get a really good sense of what you're looking at. But it's also at the same time so easy to take numbers and make it say what you want them to say. So, for example, I could make a tweet right now about how Gabriel Davis could be really good because I will use my bias to create this bucket that I can make Gabriel Davis fall in, where it's only good players in him. But that's just skewing, and I've actually done it before. So, like I did this thing. It was like, here's all the wide receivers who are early declares, have at least a 10% target share in their first 2 years, this and this. And I get this list of really good productive receivers and Gabriel Davis. Now, Gabriel Davis doesn't belong with those, but just using numbers, I can make him be a part of that group if I want to. So it's more just about being honest with the data and being able to remove yourself and any bias when looking at it.
Yeah, I've also heard, read one of the critics that sometimes you have received, that is that you close your eyes to context. What do you think about that?
I think context is super important. I think people get overblown with context because you have to be able to use it from one case to another. So I'm talking up T. Higgins because his target share is really good in year 2. Let's say, for example, it's 24.8%. That's true off the target share. And then let's say I'm talking about someone else, and I say he's really good. He had a 24% target share. And that person says, well, he was playing with so-and-so. Yeah, well, T. Higgins was also playing with so-and-so. He's playing with Jamar Chase. So I think sometimes there's too much context added in the case that the context can't be proven. So if you can't prove that being in this situation makes you this much better than that situation, then it's actually not going to help you. Because adding context, you have to know why it's important to add it. Because there's too much thrown around about you have to add context because this happened. But where's the proof that that works? Where's the proof it's predicted or predictive? It's more so just having it so that it's it works. There's proof it works. There's proof that it's important to add this certain context because that's the most important. That's where I learned the most, at least, is when someone can prove something to me or show why it matters. Then I'm like, oh, that's why it matters. That's why this context matters.
So how do you treat, like, for example, Rashad Bateman, who was a really good prospect, played some games midway through the season, but he had a low snap count because he was in a snap count. And then when he was a full go, Lamar was injured. So how do you treat that in terms of context? Because it's
Yes.
something that's really difficult to quantify.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is that you can start to do things like that. You can be like, well, you played this many games under a full snap, or high snap share. You did this many games with Lamar. The problem is when you do that and you run the splits, you end up looking at like 3-game samples, and 3-game samples would help us. So there's never 100% most accurate way to do things, but in general, looking at season-long statistics where you can get the largest sample size, and then you use that. So you just use the whole season. You don't split it up in any way. That gives you the largest sample size, which will give you the most help, is what I would say. Because, like, one of those things is, well, he played with Lamar Jackson for 3 games, so we shouldn't count the 3 that he didn't. The problem is when you compare a 3-game sample size to a 3-game sample size, you're allowing for so much variance. For example, like, you could be like, well, Gabriel Davis has this splits in week 11 through 15, but then in the 2 weeks of the playoffs, he must be a playoff performer because his splits are way better in the playoffs. It's just kind of those you don't want to get in trouble with low sample size splits, because then there's context like that, but you're actually not helping yourself at all, because if you apply that context and you have to put in all these splits, those numbers aren't actually going to help you. Too
Yeah,
much variance, too small.
yeah. Also, one of the problems, well, I think one of the problems that we have as a, like, being in the football world is that I know you like baseball, but when statistics is in baseball, we have a much bigger sample of games. We have 162 games per season, but in the NFL we have 16, now 17. So that's one of the things that makes very difficult to make splits in the NFL, because normally a good statistical sample is over 30 30 over 30 over 30 games in this case, and we don't have that type of number of sampling in the NFL. So that's
Yeah,
why.
I definitely hear you saying, like, the MLB, they can go, here's his batting average against lefties, here's his batting average against righties. The thing is, he's faced 300 righties and 100 lefties already. Whereas if we're looking, like you said, Rashad Bateman, like his games with Lamar and without Lamar, we're looking at 3 and 4 game samples or whatever it is.
So now that we're talking about Rashad Bateman, how do you view Rashad Bateman? Because I know you liked him a lot coming this season. How do you view Rashad Bateman for 2022?
So I like Rashad Bateman, and I think he's on track, if that makes sense. So he's a beta profile, which means his size is an alpha. He's close, but he's a beta in my process. So he's not some big alpha. Anyways, good prospect betas. We have like Brandon Cooks, Calvin Ridley, C.D. Lamb, Tyler Boyd, Elijah Moore, Percy Harvin, Deshaun
Sean Jackson.
is. And when you look at Rashad Bateman's first year, where he had around like a 16% target share, solid yards per route run, like 1.5-ish, or that might be yards per team pass attempt. His peripherals, if we consider those peripherals, are right on track with the Brandon Cooks, with the Calvin Ridleys. With this is essentially how these good prospects have performed. So he's not someone you should be bailing on. He's not someone you should be just beyond high on. He's exactly who we thought he would be, a really good beta. So next year, I think he makes the jump just as the rest of the guys did, because the group that he's in, the profile that he has, says that this is the most likely outcome for next year. Now, he's valued ahead of Marquis Brown. So yes, I like Rashad Bateman. He's someone you should be holding. You shouldn't be selling. You shouldn't be buying unless, in the broad scheme. You shouldn't just sell Rashad Bateman. You shouldn't just buy Rashad Bateman. But if I can flip him for like Marquis in a third or just Marquis, I would do it, because Marquis Brown, their good beta prospect, and he's now in his year after being really good his second and third year. So Marquis Brown is someone, if we look at Rashad Bateman's range of outcomes, would be on the higher side for Rashad Bateman. So basically with Rashad Bateman, you're kind of hoping he turns into Marquis Brown. But if you can swap him, you can just get Marquis Brown, taking out all of the risk.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is wide receiver 28, that's right now Rashad Bateman, is a good well, he's correctly valued, but Marquis Brown is undervalued. So you can eliminate risk and flip Bateman for Marquis Brown, and I think Marquis Brown is only like 2 years older. So year-wise, experience-wise, we don't care that much on those 2 years. Right?
Yeah, no, exactly, 100%. So for those that follow me, they know I have like a range of outcome process, which helps me see like what the range of outcomes is for this player going forward. And Marquis Brown is someone that comes in near the high side for Rashad Bateman. So yes, I like Rashad Bateman, and I think he's appropriately valued. But again, if you could just eliminate the part where he turns into that Marquis Brown, when you could just acquire Marquis.
Yeah. So for everyone who isn't familiar with Ian's process, what Ian's does is that he has one of the most popular thing he has is this thing that he calls range of outcomes, where he takes the profile and the numbers of each wide receiver and says, well, these guys are the worst case scenario for, in this case, Rashad Bateman, and these guys are the best case scenario for Rashad Bateman. And when he opens up Rashad Bateman's range of outcomes, Marquis Brown is the best range of outcome for Rashad Bateman. That's why he tells us that we should flip Bateman for Hollywood Plus. Now, what the next topic that I want to talk with Ian is film. So there's always this fight in off season that we have nothing else to do. We have this fight between analytics and film. What's your stance here? Because I've always thought that it's important to like try to put film, but good film, into analytics. Why? I don't watch film. Why? Because I don't believe that I'm good enough at watching film for me to give my take on what I'm seeing. But I'm good with numbers because I study economics. That's why I prefer to deal with analytics, but try to put some film thing on my process. What's your stance here?
Yeah, so I like what you said a lot. It's all true. So film is important. And I think that's something that gets like lost with me sometimes, because everything I show is with numbers. I'm not showing film because, like you, I'm not someone who watches film. And it's not that I don't watch football or anything like that. I love watching football. I could break down a ton of stuff for you. I love it. But if I were to watch film, I wouldn't be able to provide you an advantage by just watching it. I don't have scout eyes. I don't know 100% what I'm supposed to be looking for. So in that case, I can't actually give you an advantage of film. So my film would not be helpful. So instead, like you said, I think good is important because we can't just use numbers in a way. We want to know what's going on in the field. So the most important thing in my process is quantifiable film. So it's film by experts or film that's quantifiable, and those quantifiable numbers are sticky or predictive of success, or it's sticky and it means that it stays similar in a way. It's basically it's helpful. It's useful. Predictive, yeah. So like one of those things I use it for wide receivers, especially when I'm using the RU is or range of outcomes is PFF receiving grade. That's quantifiable film. It's people watching film at PFF that know what they're supposed to be looking for, and they have a grading criteria that goes into it, and it goes each week, and then season long it ends up putting together a grade. This person had blank PFF receiving grade. So I am able to use my process by having it quantifiable. So I do think film's really important. And then like the NFL. So when I'm looking at prospects, the NFL is doing so much more than you and me and any other fantasy players doing with these prospects. They're interviewing them. They have people that get paid a career to watch these guys and give their takes on them to the GM, what they should do. Their careers are watching these guys play. They get to bring these guys in. They have them test with, and they see it with their own eyes. That's where draft capital becomes my film grade for these prospects, because we know the NFL relies a ton on these scouts that are watching film. So let's say Jamar Chase, who went 5th overall, him going first round, 5th overall, is sort of like my film grade for him, because the NFL watched all this film. They interviewed him, and they said, this is where he should be drafted. This is his worth. So to me, that's quantifying the NFL's prospect film.
Yeah, absolutely agree, and that's why when you and when I do the thread thing, one of the most important thing is what are the mocks saying about this coming class? Because if they are saying that he's not worth even a day 2 pick, then probably he's not worth a second round in your rookie draft. So that's one of the best things you can do. And it's not because there's some people out there who say like, no, I don't use draft capital. Well, that's dumb, because it's data that you have over there that's really good to predict the future. Then why aren't you using it? It's not smart. Now, with these last 15 minutes, we're gonna talk about buys and sells and rookie prospects. So
well,
now
if I could add one personal to the film thing. So someone who had a really good analytical profile coming into the draft last year was Seth Williams. His analytical profile was really good. And then do you know what the NFL said? The NFL said he's not very good. He's worth a 6th round pick. We don't think his film's very good. We don't think he's very good. So that told me he's probably not very good. Another case would be like a Gabriel Davis. His profile was actually pretty good. But then you know what the NFL said? The NFL, all 32 teams passed over him the first 3 rounds. They said, we don't think this guy's worth a day 2 pick. The NFL told us that. So then we have to adjust what we think.
Yeah, exactly. And also we can adjust the other way. Like, we think he's not that good, but if the NFL thinks he's good, maybe we can bump him up a little bit. Like what happened with Kadarius Toney, or what will happen with Chris Olave. Like, if the NFL thinks he's good, maybe we can bump him up a little bit. So now we are at the 45-minute mark. So we're gonna talk about 1 buy and 1 sell instead of 2 buys and 2 sells. And then the last 10 minutes, we're gonna talk about rookie prospects, because now is the best time to do it. So 1 buy and 1 sell, Ian?
Yeah, I'll start off with sell just to make everyone mad. How about CD Lamb? So CD Lamb is someone who's just continuously drafted as a top 5 wide receiver, valued as a top 5 wide receiver. Unfortunately, when we look at his profile, it's not that of a top 5 wide receiver. And what do I say? What am I meaning when I say when we look at his profile, he's not a top 5 wide receiver? Well,
I think the internet hates Ian because they don't want him to speak about CD Lamb. Because, as you may know, CD Lamb is not the best out there. So, Ian, you're back.
yes,
Why
I'm
don't
back.
you like CD Lamb?
So I like CD Lamb. Do I like CD Lamb valued as a top 5 wide receiver? Absolutely not. Because his peripherals don't say he's a top 5 wide receiver. His first 2 years in the NFL, he has finished as a wide receiver 3 and a wide receiver 2 in points per game. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. His target share is 17.4% and 19.7% his first 2 years. Not bad, but it's not top 5. His yards per team pass attempt, 1.46 and 1.81. 2 is what we consider to be like elite range. He's not there. But a guy who we talked about, like T. Higgins, is valued as a back end around wide receiver 12, wide receiver 13 generally. And he has a wide receiver 1 season, just this last season. And he put up a target share like 5% higher than CeeDee Lamb's next to Jamar Chase. His team had less pass attempts per game. And he had a higher yards per team pass attempt. He finished higher. T. Higgins is someone who I would feel more comfortable putting up there. I wouldn't, but I'd feel more comfortable putting up there than a CeeDee Lamb. And that's what makes CeeDee Lamb as a sell, is that there's so many more people that are valued below CeeDee Lamb who has a better outlook going forward, who has better peripherals up to this point. Look at like Deontay Johnson. He has pretty much outproduced CeeDee Lamb if you compare their year 2s together. And then Deontay Johnson took off in year 3, got even better than year 2. And he's valued way below CeeDee Lamb. And that's kind of just the issue with CeeDee Lamb, is how high his value really is.
Also, DK Metcalf is below CD Lamb.
Oh, yes. And I would much rather have DK Metcalf.
Yeah. So now, your buy.
I've got quite a bit of buys, but I'll go with Trey Lance because I talk about Trey Lance a good amount. Trey Lance, who has break fantasy football within the range of outcomes. And what do I mean by that? Lamar Jackson broke fantasy football in his second year. That type of break fantasy football where you finish as the clear QB1 and you're providing weekly large advantages over your opponent because of how much higher your QB can score on the average than theirs. So what makes him like this? Well, we know he got high draft capital, which we just talked about. He was a good prospect. I had it as an elite prospect, which for QBs is a really good sign. And if we look at elite Konami quarterbacks, which means in college, he is able to rush enough to be considered a Konami quarterback. He hit the Konami thresholds for me. So what other elite Konami quarterbacks do I have? Patrick Mahomes, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, RG3, Kyler Murray, Justin Fields, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow just squeaked by with the Konami. But those are all the elite Konami prospects I had. Just being a part of that group says Trey Lance is probably pretty fantasy football. And then you add in the fact that he is on one of the top yak teams, meaning you shouldn't stress too much over how good of a passer is he, because he has Deebo Samuel, who is a yak monster. He has George Kittle, who is a yak monster. He has Brandon Ayuk, who is an underrated yak monster, meaning he doesn't need to throw the ball super far or anything to get these extra yards because he has wide receivers that do it. And then you talk about Kyle Shanahan having one of the best rushing offenses in the NFL year in and year out. And then he adds with his 3rd overall pick a Konami quarterback, meaning he probably wants Trey Lance to rush as well. And how do we know this? Well, just in the 2 games that he started, which, again, we shouldn't use small sample sizes, so take this with a grain of salt. Trey Lance had a 36.9% carry percentage in his 2 games that started this season. That would put him by far the highest carry percentage of any rookie, which we do have to take those 2 game sample sizes with a grain of salt, but really good prospect. super high ceiling because of the Konami stuff. He's in a fantastic situation for what we're looking for. And in the two small games we got to see who was Trey Lance, he rushed a ton.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Trey Lance is a really good QB, and I have him in some leagues. So now we're gonna talk about wide receiver rookie prospects. What do you think of David Bell, who in the combine just took a hit to his future? No, like he didn't have a good combine. So what do you think of David Bell?
Yeah, so David Bell is someone that I've been touting as a really good prospect up to this point. He's been a really good prospect. His profile is that of an elite receiver, which is already a really good thing to see because the hit rate for elite receivers are very good. Now, you brought up the combine, which David Bell did not do good at. So there's kind of, I'm trying to figure out, it's like Schrodinger's David Bell, if that makes any sense here in a second. So his combine metrics to me don't matter. I don't really care how he did in the combine. I mean, Keenan Allen, his relative athletic score, his 4M wasn't good. DeAndre Hopkins wasn't good. And there's a ton of other cases like that. So combine metrics themselves aren't very predictive, especially for wide receivers. They really don't matter. But what matters? Draft capital. And combine metrics to this point seem to matter to the NFL. So if the NFL still says David Bell's a second-round pick, well, then guess what? David Bell's an elite receiver, someone that we really want. If he falls to round 3 or later, then yes, that changes our profile or how we view David Bell, because the NFL is
The NFL is better than us in this.
so if he goes round 2, we'll be collecting a ton of David Bell. If he goes round 3, but he's still around like 2 point, basically an early 2, I'd be happy with a round 3 David Bell. If David Bell falls to round 4, well, then we've got our this year's Seth Williams, I guess.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And what do you think about Chris Olave?
The opposite. So the NFL really likes him, at least from where we're seeing him mocked in the first round. But the thing is, when I added first round draft capital, which matters a lot to my grading of prospects, he still is not a good prospect. If I mean, I know I shouldn't talk too much about my for these,
Okay, you're again.
but he comes in even with the first round grade as a low ceiling spec.
Okay, you were fading out a little
So
bit.
if we're looking at, gotcha.
Yeah.
So the low ceiling first round wide receiver is what his current grade looks like. He looks like he's going to go round 1, and it still puts him at low ceiling range for me. Low ceiling beta. The problem is there's been a lot of really bad low ceiling betas in the first round. I'll name all the low ceiling first round betas that I have. Santonio Holmes would be like, he's like the poster child of being a good low ceiling first round receiver. He had 3 wide receiver 2 seasons, so he's all right. Kendall Wright, and now we're going to fall off a cliff here. Henry Ruggs, Corey Coleman, AJ Jenkins, John Ross, Josh Doxson.
Yeah,
So that's
really
kind of the bucket that it appears we see Chris Olave in.
It's really bad. I don't like him because of the early declare stuff. Like he wasn't an early declare, and then a lot of people say no, but he was playing with Garrett Wilson and what's the other guy's name? This Smith and
Jackson Smith Enigma.
Yeah, but it's like, well, he was 1 and 2 years older than them, and he wasn't able to outproduce them. So why exactly do we think he's gonna outproduce guys like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown?
Yeah, and we can go back to the context thing that we were talking about, where like they want you to add context because of who they played with. The problem is we have history that tells us even if you're playing with good players, you still have to produce to be likely good. I mean, AJ Brown still comes in as an elite prospect. He played with DK Metcalf and Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore's still a good prospect. He played with DK Metcalf and AJ Brown and Van Jefferson. And then like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson were league winners, and they played with each other.
Yeah, I think also the Olaver thing is that he's from a good school. Like, for example, I understand guys like Corey Davis or Jalen Tolbert who are in small schools and they stay an extra year because they want to break the league and raise a hand for the NFL. But if you are in like Ohio State, the teams know you. If you're good, they're gonna draft you. Why staying? He didn't even break the league when he stayed. So I don't know. I'm not into Chris Olave.
If he's an option in the second round, I might be interested in Chris Olave, but he's not going to be. At least doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I've seen him go at the third pick. So I don't want Chris Olave. So which wide receiver do you prefer? Traylon Burks or Drake London?
This is a tough one. But I'll go Drake London just because I have since the beginning of the offseason, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Drake London's been my wide receiver one, but both in the same tier for me. Okay. Both have really good profiles. And the slight favor that I've been giving Drake London comes from I've seen him continually higher in mock drafts. I'm curious to see, because people are overreacting that Traylon Burks wasn't this superhuman freak. So I guess we'll see if people still have his draft capital around like Drake London's top 15, where I'm kind of seeing him. I've seen Drake London at 10 a lot, just looking through mock drafts. So it seems like he's going to get a little higher draft capital, very similar profiles, but that slight difference makes me want to go Drake London between the two.
Last question before we say goodbye to the episode. I want you, and this is gonna be tough for you, I want you to plant your flag on a third round rookie, like third round in rookie drafts, not in like NFL drafts, in dynasty rookie drafts. I want you to plant your flag in a guy who's gonna be available on third round dynasty rookie drafts. Who's your guy there? My guy is Jalen Tolbert, and you know it. My guy is Jalen Tolbert. Who's your guy?
All right, well, I got to think who would be available in third round of rookie drafts. But
Sky Moore is not going to be available.
Yeah, no, let's see here. It would have to be a running back for me. It would be, let's see, there's Tyler Goodson, Sincere McCormick, possibly Keontae Ingram, Letty Brown. I like Letty Brown. I would say, can I plant my flag on any of the four?
Okay. Whoever gets the best draft capital, right?
Yeah, that's what we'll call it.
Okay. Yeah, we'll call it that. So now we are just about to get to the 1 hour mark. So now we're gonna finish it up. Ian, thanks a lot for accepting this invitation. Thank you a lot for your time. And sorry everybody for my English and for Ian's internet. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Ian, leave us your Twitter handle and whatever you want to promote right now.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. I had a ton of fun just chopping up shop is what I would call it. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at DynastyIM. If you want to see all the ruse, all the rookie prospects and stuff, I do have a Patreon that my guy, Mr. Martinez, here is a part of, so you can catch Mr. Martinez there. But yeah, follow me on Twitter, and hope to see you around.
Yeah, that Discord, well, that Patreon is where I go when I want confirmation bias on my trades.
Yes.
So, well, I hope we see some of you guys there on Ian's Patreon, but not a lot because I'm going to lose my edge. So, thank you for being here. See you guys next week.